Hey everyone, today I am going to install sound in my Cotton Belt SD45T-2 Bicentennial unit. Of course, you have seen I have already taken the shell off, and including in taking the shell off, I also took off all of the grab irons so that way they would not get damaged. So in doing so, if you notice, we have our track feeders here, and then we have one of the old styles where the original board, ready to roll board, is clipped onto the motor. This would be either the positive or the negative from the motor, and here's the other motor wire. So in order to go from this to our Soundtraxx Tsunami2 board, we're going to have to solder a wire back here. Alright, so to do that, I've got my soldering iron ready. I've got solder. Must have. I even have a little bit of flux. This is Alpha OM338. Really good stuff. I think this is what Soundtraxx uses. And then, of course, I have a little thing that when I went to the Soundtraxx dealer training, they gave me this thing, and this is really good for holding things. It looks like it's just nothing but a piece of masonite with a closed clip turned backwards, and it works very, very well. As far as sound, I have two Soundtraxx Minicube speakers that is wired in series. So that's what we're going to use for our sound. I'm going to set this off to the side. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to see if we can't get this wire here soldered to that metal brad. Okay, so now we got our wire attached to the motor feed. Now what we will need to do is to isolate that from our card, which I've got some electrical tape around here somewhere. Oh, electrical tape. There it is. Off to the side. Electrical tape is good stuff. And if you're using electrical tape, it's always best to have some good electrical scissors. Alright, so I just need enough to isolate so that way our board does not touch it. And I'm basically just going to press that down right over where the wire would go and on top of the motor itself. Nothing fancy, plain and simple. Okay, now I got to look at my board. So if I flip the board upside down, it will let me know which is the headlight side, which is the backlight side. So this is the headlight, this is the head of my locomotive, so my board will go there. Now as far as guessing, well, which one's your positive and which one's your negative? Well, that's a guess in itself. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the black as negative, because typically in most Athearn locomotives, the positive will either be orange or red, or sometimes yellow. Alright, so I guess what I need to do first is to tin these wires. To do that, I grab my flux, make sure there's enough flux at the end, dab the wire inside, dab the wire inside, take my soldering iron, make sure I have just a little bit of solder on there, like so, and just touch it. And then that is tinning your wires. Okay. Now we can look at putting the board back on here. I'm going to see if I can get this one to go through, which I did. Bend it down, because that's going to be the one to really hold my stuff in place. Alright. Toothpicks always come in handy too, to spread a little bit of flux on joints. Go ahead and get that one set as well. And soldering iron again. I have just a little bit on there, so I'm going to go ahead and tin that down. And it looked like it did not work. Alright, plan 2. Use a little bit of solder. Alright, it took that time. And I'm going to go ahead and set that back. And I'm going to grab this wire. Since it's longer, I'm actually going to stick it up through that hole right there. That'll work. And instead of going up, I'm going to go down with it. And I'm going to get the toothpick just to kind of weight it down a little. Oh, that failed. Alright, so let me see if I can't get a little solder on the plus. Alright, so I got my solder in. And I apologize if my hands are in the way, but this is very, very tricky to do without burning yourself. Okay, so now we have our motor attached. Alright, and here we are going to start working on getting the track feeds. Let me get this out of the way so we can see a little better. So here we have one track feed here, one track feed there. If I'm not mistaken, well, we also had this that was attached right there. So I'm thinking this is one of the older versions that have the track feed going through the frame, and then the other track feed just coming straight from the trucks. So what we will need to do is wire both of these from the trucks onto the same side. And then the frame will be just wired in once. And then what we'll do is test to make sure that that works. So what I'm doing right now is I'm tinning my wire with flux. And then with flux, let's see if we can get a little solder on there. Okay. And then I'll go ahead and just stick that in that one. See if I can hold her down. And see if I can get just a little bit of solder in there. That's not good. It's a little easier when you have a board that's actually solid and not just held on by just a few wires. It's much easier when you have a solid board. And I would put tape in there, but I need some of these here in a little bit, so the tape's just not going to help. So sometimes you just got to do with what you got. Okay. So you can see that's on. So we got 4 good connected wires. Now, what I need to do is find the right screw. Oh yeah, if you take the tanks off like that, they make a great screw holder. So now the purpose is to find which is the right screw. So now that I've got my front weight reinstalled and the front, the other rail piece, I need to tin it as well. So just basically getting a little bit of flux on there. And I still got plenty of solder. So I'm just going to dab it. And that makes it one good wire. And then this is where it gets a little tricky, because this is a very short wire to work with. Alright. Yep, and I'm dropping stuff. It happens. Alright. I believe that is held on pretty dang good. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to pause this video. We're going to go set this on the track. Of course, I know I don't have sound, but we want to go ahead and test to make sure that we do have a connection and that we got the motor correctly. If not, then we will have to reverse our motor wires. So I'm going to go ahead and pause. Okay, so what I'm using is NCE ProCab, and I have this currently set to address 3, which is the default address for the locomotive. Having it set on the track, you can see the blue LED, which tells me that we do have power going to this board. So now I'm going to put it in the forward direction, and this should be the front, this should be the nose, so we should see it go this direction. Ooh, and maybe dirty track. Let's try it again. Might have to try to break this motor in. There it goes. So I got a little dirty track now. I got it in reverse. And if you got dirty track, these ain't gonna work very well. Alright, so now we've got something going. It looks like I was able to get the wire motors correct. Slowing it down. Changing the direction again. And this is an older locomotive that I recently acquired. I don't know if it was new, if it was used, but this is an older run from the early to mid 2000s. So I know it's got an older style motor in it, and it probably just needs re-broke in or broke in. So, alright, so this shows that we have done the right thing as far as getting the rail pickups wired correctly and the motor wired correctly to the decoder. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and then next we're going to start working on getting our speakers installed. Okay, so I'm back, and now, like I said, we've got 2 of the Soundtraxx Minicube speakers. They are wired together in, not parallel, but my mind just went blank on me, but series mode. So basically I've got one wired here, then the wire that comes from here goes to that one, and then this one here. Alright, so if you look on the board, it's kind of hard to tell, but we got an S plus and an S minus. I don't think these mini cubes tell us if there is a plus and a minus side. I'm not seeing it anywhere, so I don't think they're... Some speakers, it does matter which way you wire, some speakers, not necessarily. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and get my toothpick and get some flux on these 2 speaker jumpers or contacts. And then I'm also going to go ahead and put some flux on my wires for my speakers as well. And then get this really hot soldering iron. Go ahead and see if we can tin that. The nice thing about using communication wire or telephone wire is the wire is copper on the inside, and you know if you got it tinned right, it goes from copper to, you know, that solder color like a silver. Alright. I got one wired a little better than the other. Okay. And what I might have to do is flip this thing around because I really don't want to burn that wire. So I'm going to take my locomotive and I'm going to flip it around. There we go. Now this yellow wire should not be in my way. Alright, so let's go ahead and do the plus. We'll do yellow for the plus. And I know both wires have yellow and blue on them, but one is primary yellow and one is primarily blue. Just get my soldering iron on there just long enough to get that down. That's held. I'll do the same thing with this one. Maybe. There it goes. Okay. Now we have the speaker in. One of the things I need to take note is these wires, they were really hanging through right here. So I'm going to take my electrical scissors and snap these suckers off. Sometimes you got to change your angles. There we go. And that looks a little better. I'm going to go ahead and do the same for all of these that have also been wired in from the top. There we go. Alright. Now, let's pause the video again and we're going to see how it sounds on the track. Okay, so now I'll put the locomotive back on. We're getting some sound. So right now I still don't have the lights hooked up, so I'm not going to mess with the lights, but here's our default bell. Horn. Short horn. And so now I'm going to go ahead and do just a horn sequence. I'm going to move it forward. Alright, stopping. I'm going to change my direction. Short horn 3 times. Going in reverse. Stopping. Alright, looks like we got good sound on there. Of course, 8 always mutes it. And then if you want your sound back, you can always press function 8 again, and it comes back on. Alright, so now we're going to do the lighting, and we'll go from there. Okay, so here's my shell, and one thing that I do want to explain before we do, we get into the actual lighting. I have 2 lights down here on the nose and 2 lights up here above the cab. And of course we have 2 more lights on the back, which really don't mean nothing. Now, Southern Pacific and Cotton Belts, their locomotives always saw the lights here, and they always had a Mars light up here. A lot of times when you get these from Athearn, if it's not the Genesis model, they will have these lights and these lights all wired in together. Where here we're going to have to take these off and move them to a function 3 and put these on the front headlight. But we can program it later so that way when you do turn on the front headlight, the FX3 lights will be in a Mars state, and the regular headlights, which will be on the nose, will be in a regular state. Alright, so let's go ahead and start. I always like to do my back ones first because, go ahead, get it done, get it over with type thing. So let me move my speakers out of the way. Now, also something to keep in mind with Athearns, you do not use, I might need to turn my light on. That's probably a little easier, more visual. So if you look at the Soundtraxx decoders, you have the rectangular contact and then you have an oval contact. Now if you're using LEDs, you're going to want to use these oval contacts and use like a 1000 ohm resistor. With these Athearn locomotives, they have these very, very small 1.5 volt miniature incandescent light bulbs that are like 1.2 millimeters in diameter. So what we're going to end up doing is actually putting one part of our light here, and all of the lights will actually be wired into this 1.5 volt common contact here. So nothing will be wired on this oval one, and nothing will be wired on the oval one in the front. So otherwise, if you do not do that, you will blow one of the chips on the decoders, and that's not good. So, alright, so starting off, let's go ahead and we're going to wire in one side of the black. So I've got black here. And we need to go ahead and tin that, so get some flux on that. Yeah, I got a little bit on there. And this makes these two wires act as if it was one wire. Flux is solder's best friend. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is we're going to put some flux on that one contact. That one right there, so that way it sucks that solder right on into it. Alright. Make sure I got the right one. And like I said, I apologize if my big fat hands are getting in the way. And y'all, I'm also left-handed, so it's a little harder for me to do when I have to do things with my right. Alright, there we go. We've got that lead soldered in. Alright, now I told you that the front nose lights, that's going to be these here, are going to be wired into the front light. The ones above the cab are going to be wired into FX3. So I'm going to go ahead and solder these in together. And let's get a little bit of flux on our other contact. Like I said, toothpicks really work well. I don't know if y'all can see that or not. Okay. Now let's get a little bit of solder on that. Let's go ahead and get this wire stuck in. And I know the weight is probably in the way on this one. And this is going to be tricky because I've got to work around other wires. Okay, looks like our cap or nose light is installed. There's the other common. Now we're going to work on doing an FX3. So let me go ahead and put that back. Go ahead and get that. Put some flux on it. And let's get some flux on this FX3 contact right there. Okay. Then this is where it gets a little trickier, because now I'm really working beside another wire. There. I don't think that grabbed very good. No, it didn't. Maybe if I go on this side here. Okay, I've gotten too much solder on my soldering iron, so what you can do is if you get a damp paper towel, it's great at getting the solder off. Alright, try again. Okay, I think we got it that time. One thing you want to make sure that you definitely don't do is get your solder to bridge the gaps between multiple connections or multiple contacts. Otherwise, you'll definitely short out something. So I'm actually going to move this closer to my light so I can see a little better. And I honestly cannot tell. I think I'm in the clear, so I think we're fine. Okay. Now the fun part. So there's one of two ways we could do this. We could try to take all of these commons and put them in that 1.5 volt. I don't like that idea, because that is just too tough to do. much easier to grab a little bit of spare communication wire. And I've already got a little bit of solder on that end, so what I'm just going to do is flux my contact. Like so. And then take a little bit of solder here, like so. And then reheat that solder. Get my common wire in there, which I've got. Alright, and then now since I've got all my wires in where they go, I think it's time to tape that board down because it is getting on my nerves. Let's see my flathead. You definitely don't want too much tape. Okay, so I'm going to try to get that motor lead out of the way, bend that wire down, and I'm basically just taping on the side of the motor itself, just enough to wrap my tape around like that. Now my board's not going anywhere and it's should be completely isolated. Okay, now what we're going to do is see if we can't try to solder some stuff up. Down there. And what I'm going to do is cut here. Try that again. There we go. And then cut. This is so that way I don't have to stretch my wires. Okay. We are going to go ahead and try to solder these three together. All right. I just realized something's not going to work right if I do that. I need to take that off. And it will go on that one. Okay. Alright. Let's get that fluxed. And we'll go ahead and flux that one too. Alright. This is one of those times where a paper, like a clothespin or something to keep, your stuff held together. This is where these come in real handy. However, the problem is this is not going to fit there. So, I'm going to have to try to do this the best way I can by keeping it together. Okay, let's see if I can get a little solder on my soldering iron. And get a little bit of solder. You know it's working good when the wire gets hot. That is for sure. Now, of course it would be my luck. As soon as I there we go. We got 3 wires attached to that common. Now I'm going to take this, shove it down some if I can. I don't think it's going to let it go any farther. I'm going to pull it back off and I'm going to cut this in half. So that way I'm not wasting shrink wrap or shrink tubing. Alright, let's get that back on. We got it there. Take the soldering iron and we're just going to basically heat this up till it shrinks. Okay, and that'll keep that in place. Now, I'm going to take these 2 wires from the front and I'm going to twist these together because we're just going to basically turn this into 1 wire, like so. We're going to put some flex on it. And let's see. Don't have any soldering on my iron. I do now. And we tinned that as well. And I need to go ahead and tin that wire. I've got enough on there to tin that one. Now, let's see, can I use my finger knot? We're gonna find out. I think I've got enough to where I can, so this is where this comes in real handy. Alright. Okay. Now I've got my soldering iron. Like I said, y'all, I'm left-handed, so this just makes it real much easier said than done, you know, if it's a right-hander doing it. So all you lefties out there, you probably know what I'm talking about. Okay. And that wire is on as well, and I forgot to put my tubing on, so it's always good to have some electrical tape on the side. If you do that, you don't need a whole bunch. Take that off. We're done with you for right now. Hopefully done with you for the rest of the night. Okay. We're going to go back and set it on the track and see if we have lighting. Alright, so let's check the lighting now since our locomotive has started up. Well, so I've got my 2 headlights, which should work. Now if I go to direction, I've got the 2 rear lights. And it looks like one of my lights popped out up here, so I'm probably going to have to take the shell apart again and get that other light fixed. And then we should also have, let's see here. I'm probably going to have to program at least enough to get those lights on the front up there. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this video so that way I can research on how to get this programmed. Okay, so after a little bit of light programming and me having to fix one of the bulbs above, it kind of fell out when I put the locomotive back together. Now you can see that I have it programmed where CV51, which is the lighting aspect for FX3, now has the Mars light programmed to it. This is, of course, the forward headlight, backup headlight here. I have CV57 programmed to 5 for bits 1 and bit 4. And then when we go to direction, those lights go off, the rear headlights come on, which I had to program CV58 just for bit 2 for the rear light. When I go back to forward, change the direction again. Now both lights on the front of the locomotive come on. So this locomotive is ready to go, except for maybe some sound programmings later that I might do that are, you know, direct to this style of locomotive. You know, the horn type, the bell type, prime mover types, which I will have to do a little research on my end to see exactly the full makeup of this locomotive. Other than that, I hope this helps you as far as your sound installs. You know, make sure you like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell, and, you know, leave a comment. Let me know how I'm doing. So, alright, well, I hope this helps. Thanks.